Roadshow News Recap starts right now. Thank you so much for joining us. This week, the LA Auto Show is in town, and so today we're talking all about the super cool electric vehicle concepts we saw out in LA. Chief among them, the production Fisker Ocean electric SUV. This looks pretty good, and we have a lot to say about it. Porcshe also revealed the new Taycan GTS Sport Turismo, and it's one sexy electric wagon, if you ask me, so we're going to talk all about that. Hyundai showed off what is basically a living room on wheels, aka the 7 concept that previews a new electric SUV coming. And sister company Kia showed off what it calls the EV9 concept, a big, boxy electric SUV. And, well, you see it right there. It looks pretty good, and we will have plenty to say about that as well, so stay tuned for all of it. This week, Craig Cole, who typically joins me, is still traveling back home from Los Angeles, so I have the one and the only Antoine Goodwin back here again to chat about all this stuff. How's it going, Antoine?
It's going pretty good. How you doing?
Good. You know, can't complain. Back again. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to everybody watching. And, you know, as always, give us a like, subscribe to Roadshow News. We were very busy this past week with LA Auto Show coverage, so the channel was a little sleepy, but it's going to wake up. Don't worry about it. So you subscribe, and you got more good stuff coming your way. But with all of that out of the way, Antoine, I kind of wanted to just put the Fisker Ocean right in your lap because I believe you were at CES in 2019 when Fisker first showed the Ocean concept. So I figured you'd be great to kick things off with that.
Right. So, yeah, it seems like forever ago, CES 2020. It feels like it was 5 years ago, but it was just last year, actually, that we saw the Fisker Ocean. And then today, this week in the LA, around the LA Auto Show, we saw the Fisker Ocean. It's a compact SUV, a little bit larger than maybe a CR-V, about the same length as a Tesla Model 3 or a Mustang Mach-E, even though it's interesting how all three of those vehicles have kind of taken the SUV silhouette and done something different with it around electrification. But it is the production model. One of the most interesting features we're seeing right now is the Revolve infotainment screen. And it goes from a portrait orientation when you're driving so that you can see your map and further down the road with the vertical orientation. And then when it's time to park and consume media, it rotates the whole thing like you would pick up a tablet and do, but it's motorized. It rotates to a landscape orientation for consuming media, watching movies and stuff while you charge. But that's the infotainment in the dashboard. It's supposed to be the highest resolution infotainment screen that we've ever seen in a car. So we'll see how that works out when the production model actually gets here. But let's talk about the vehicle around, excuse me, let's talk about the vehicle around that infotainment. And it is, like I said, compact SUV. There's 2 batteries that are going to be supplied with it. One is a nickel manganese battery. One's a lithium ion phosphate battery that's good for around 250 miles in the base model. But then if you step up into the upper trim levels, that switches to a nickel manganese cobalt battery that gives you between 350 and 340 miles of range, depending on your spec. So they're doing an interesting thing where they're not just offering 2 different battery capacities, they're offering 2 different battery chemistries because the lithium batteries are actually less expensive. That's going to let them hit that price point that they want for the entry level and keep it affordable.
Yeah, the lithium iron phosphate ones.
Yeah.
Super. So, I think that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's and it's supposed to start around 37.5 when it starts rolling off of the assembly lines in Austria around this time next year, and then more expensive models can reach upwards of around $70,000. Another interesting thing that they're doing with production is that the platform for this vehicle is supplied by Magna Steyr, an Austrian company that is like kind of a tier 1 provider, and they're going to also help with production in Austria. But then they'll also be able to work with potentially Foxconn to do some North American production in Ohio. So again, two different partners for building it. It seems like Fisker has sort of done this interesting thing where they're working way more closely with those sort of tier one partners for that typically provide things like your brakes or the software or the glass for your windows and things like that. They're working very closely with those companies and decentralizing their manufacturing with this vehicle.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
that'll give them a
There was
better shot at getting it off the ground.
Yeah, seriously, it seemed like the Fisker Ocean was in doubt for a little while just because it seemed like such a big project. Obviously, this is Fisker's second go at building a car and selling en masse. Fisker, OG Fisker didn't quite make it. So this one,
Yeah.
it looks like they kind of have their ducks in a row with, okay, outsource the production, Magna Steyr, like you said. They took a Magna Steyr platform, though CEO and founder Henrik Fisker says about 90% of that platform was changed, that Fisker got his hands on it and really made something their own. I kind of want to backstep to the design because I think this is a super good looking car. Like, I am shocked that it looks this good. The concept, it was a good looking car, but actually something about the production car looks better to me for some reason.
Mm-hmm. It's got those interesting features, like the whole sort of like greenhouse of this vehicle is ripe with cool things that we could talk about for almost half an hour by itself, like the solar roof that's said to add up to 2,000 miles of electric range over the course of a year. So if you park it outside every day, throughout the course of the year, you're looking at 1,500 if you live in an area that doesn't get great sun, to 2,000 miles if you live in maybe the middle of the desert, for example. So don't park this in your garage. It ends up being more efficient overall. It's got the interesting sort of there's one button you can press that brings all the windows and the back glass down, so that you get an open air driving experience. And those little tiny sail panel windows that are normally fixed behind the back doors are actually little doggy windows on this. So you can open those up so your pup can stick his head out, get a little bit of the air, but it's a small enough window that most dogs won't be able to hop out of it while you're driving.
Right.
So again, cool.
Right.
The greenhouse is cool. The fact that it's all blacked out on the top really slims the profile of the vehicle. And again, it's just a very different take on this class of compact SUV, and it's interesting to see how electrification has allowed automakers just kind of go nuts with things. Like, this thing's got a wheelbase that's like 10 inches longer than anything else, than the conventional vehicle in its class, and it helps it get that really hunched down stance.
Yeah, that kind of poses another good question that we wanted to talk about was, is this a car that could really take a bite out of the Model Y and Model 3? I mean, this is going to start a lot cheaper than a Model Y, I believe now starts over $60,000 before that's the cheapest one you can get. Fisker's talking about not only like a $37,000 starting price, but also this like flexible lease program where you pay $3,000 up front as like an upstart charge, and then $379 a month or something like that. And you keep the car. You can turn it back in whenever you want. You get 30,000 miles, and it's just kind of like, keep it for as long as you want. And then when you're done, they take it back, and then they like release it at a discounted price because it's a used vehicle at that point. And then I believe it was like after 10 or 12 years, they said they're going to recycle these cars. And speaking of recycling, that should be easy to do because like the carpets and a lot of the materials inside of the Ocean are made from previously used fishing nets and plastics that Fisker is recycling and creating the
stuff
cockpit
they've pulled out of the ocean.
Yeah, right. Hence the name. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's. I think that the alternative approach to ownership, or not ownership, or leasing is interesting. It will draw a lot of people in who don't necessarily want to pay that big upfront expense of buying a car. But I think that the biggest question is, can this company deliver it? I mean, like you said, this is Henrik Fisker's second shot at this. And I mean, a lot of people will, are still kind of confused about the fact that Karma, his old company, is still out there kicking around making cars. There's at least 30% of the time I accidentally call this the Karma Ocean. There's a lot of confusion around the brand. This is a second shot. It's not proven. The way that they're manufacturing these vehicles with partners raises a lot of questions as far as relying on those providers to basically build the car for you. Is it going to be the same quality of vehicle coming off of a Foxconn line in Ohio as the one that's coming off of the Magna line in Europe? A lot of big question marks here. So if anything, it's worth keeping an eye on, because the story behind this vehicle is one of the most interesting ones, I think, right now.
Yeah, yep. Like I alluded to before, it looked dicey once again for a while, because it seemed it was kind of like, where's Fisker going to actually build these? Like so many startups, it just kind of always felt like the cart was ahead of the horse with the Ocean. And it was just like, nope, it's going to be good. We're going to build them. We're going to get them out here. Here's all this information. And then finally the Magna Steyr deal, which, I mean, if you're going to find a partner to build your car initially, like that's a pretty good one to choose. Like if people don't know,
sure.
I believe they still build the G Wagon, and the Toyota Supra,
they're like
BMW Z4.
They're also like a big partner in the Sony car that made huge waves. At that same CES actually, which again, that car wasn't meant to be built. But it shows that they're partners with traditional automakers, and they're sort of partnering with people outside of the traditional automaker space, and they've got experience with electrification. So it's a good partnership. It's just a lot of question marks about how those partnerships are going to mesh up, because we've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of that nifty solar roof, I should never rely on that here in Ohio, because half the year is just gray, rainy, and dull. So maybe our colleagues in LA would get better use out of that. Not me. Not here in the dairy belt.
Best case scenario, it saves you about 1% on charging a year. So money in your pocket, one way or the other, even if it doesn't make a huge dent.
Yes, and I won't go spend it all at once.
So enough about electric Fiskers of questionable provenance. The next car we've got coming up is one that is a certified banger. Tell me about the Porcshe Taycan GTS.
Oh yeah. This one, I was like, yeah, now we're talking, because if you guys don't remember, we don't get the Sport Turismo variant in any sort of like normal way here in the US. We get the Cross Turismo, which is like the slightly more rugged, lifted off-roadish Taycan variant. So in fact, this is going to be the only way you can get a Taycan Sport Turismo is in this GTS guise, so to speak, because Porsche doesn't have plans to bring it here in any other way. So you got to get the high performance one if you want a lower slung wagon. It is sexy as hell, in my opinion, and looks so much better than the Cross Turismo. And the way Porsche is justifying this is they are placing it between the Taycan 4S and the turbo model. So this makes 590 horsepower, which is a crap ton of horsepower, especially when we're talking about an electric vehicle. So this thing's going to fly. I'm pretty smitten with this thing. It looks great, especially in the red color they brought it in for the LA Auto Show.
Typically, the GTS trim level is what I think is the sweet spot in the lineups of things like the Panamera. It's just you get the performance that you need, but it's not so hardcore. The price is usually in a nice sweet spot. So yeah, this is gonna be, I think, a winner when it gets here. I mean, particularly because for enthusiasts, we love those sort of wagony profile sort of things, the capability that you're going to get with this. But I mean, yeah, the performance, it's not going to look like any other Taycan out there, which, I mean, they're not the most common car on the road, but I mean, this will definitely stand you apart. And so if you're the kind of person who's trying to make a visual statement, people will know what you've got when you got this.
Yeah. It's like this, I feel like, is the electric alternative to like an RS6 Avant. That's what I think of in my head, especially seeing it in this like fire engine-ish red color. But yeah, it looks really, really good. Porsche did a different suspension tune for this, bigger brakes, because this is a a performance car now at the end of the day. And what is interesting, and we didn't hear it, is Porsche says they've tweaked that like augmented sound that you can turn on in a Taycan, and made it a little bit different for the GTS variant. So it's got a distinct, what do you want to say, growl sound to it when you push the accelerator. I
Hmm.
actually think the Taycans, the noise that Porsche engineers or sound designers came up with is really cool, because you can actually hear that like 2-speed transmission shift with it, and I'm like, that just sounds like really cool. It's not like totally like
Right.
Star Wars Pod Racer, and it's not just like here's a fake sounding flat six engine or something. It's like this interesting synthesized mix. So I'd be curious to hear what this GTS sounds like, because I think the original
I
sound is
thought I
cool.
was going to be annoyed by the fake engine noises in EVs, but these automakers, particularly the premium performance brands, luxury brands, are putting a buttload of money into making sure that these things sound fantastic. They're throwing home theater technology at them. They're hiring
Mhm.
sound designers for movies. The e-tron sounds amazing. The EQS
Yeah.
is another vehicle where you've got 3 different modes that you can choose from. Do you want it to sound like a conventional car? Do you want it to sound like a pod racer? Do you want it to sound like nothing? Like that ability
Mhm.
to sort of with software make these cars sound different is way better than you at home are probably thinking if you've never sat in one of these cars and driven in absolute silence. Like the audio component of driving is still a very important one for that, what's
Mhm.
going on in your head and the sensation of the vehicle. So it's great that it's there. It's great that they're trying to make it good. I'm really looking forward to hearing what this sounds like. And I don't think this would be the same car if it sounded exactly like a base Taycan.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally
All speculation.
100% agree. Of course. I totally agree that it's nice, especially if you're looking at a performance EV, to have it's a blank slate, for companies, brands, automakers, whatever, to kind of redefine, okay, what does this performance car sound like? Because you can make it
Hmm.
sound like whatever you want at the end of the day. So it's cool that they throw options out there. I can totally foresee a future where you have like a in-car store where it's like, oh, like how custom ringtones were really cool in 2005. It's just like, what do I
Hmm.
want my Taycan GTS to sound like today? Do I want it to sound like a 911 race car? Do I want it to sound like a 718 Cayman? I don't know. There
Right.
could be so many options, so I think that's interesting. But aside from the
And AVs
sound and
aren't,
the great.
they're quieter, but they're not exactly silent. There is still noise. And so, imagine like the far flung future where you've got like true racing EVs or, true sports car EVs where you can hear the actual motor or you can hear like gear
Mhm.
noise or something like that. Like highlight those things. One of the things that I find interesting in when you're driving a fast EV with the windows down is that you can really hear what the tires are doing, and that's
Mhm.
important for like determining how much grip you have. Are you like rolling over onto the sidewall? What's going on down there? Are you starting to get a little bit of that sort of screech from the tires that you normally wouldn't hear over road noise? It gives you a great connection to
Mhm.
the road. So there is still like, even in the future where there is no sound, there's still sound. So
Yeah, totally, totally. We don't have a crystal ball, but it's kind of an exciting time to be covering the industry regardless, because it's such a crazy change and so many things are changing. I think I said like last week's show or 2 weeks ago, I'm like, every 6 months it feels like we're looking 7 years into the future, kind of thing. But yeah, aside from the cool sounds this will make, Porsche gussied things up with some more aggressive bumpers. The styling's a little bit
mhm.
different to let you know that this is a GTS Sport Turismo. And Antoine, you said this will be a sweet spot for prices. I mean, perhaps for the average Taycan buyer it will be, but certainly not for me, because this will be
Right.
available in the second quarter of 2022, and prices start at $134,650, which is more than what I paid for my house when I bought it.
Yeah, I mean, sweet spot for price when you're talking about a luxury performance car is a different world, right? It's like saying that the sweet spot for a Rolls is the Dawn, right? Like it's not the same
Yeah.
level of sweet spot. So yeah,
Yeah.
still pricey,
Yeah.
still pricey, still pricey enough to be rare and special when you see them. But yeah, not on my shopping list either.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. So that is the GTS Sport Turismo. And before we move on to the next vehicle we wanted to talk about from the LA Auto Show this week, I just wanted to encourage you all watching to check out the traditional standard Roadshow YouTube channel, because we have so many new videos that went live this week, especially if you're interested in the Ocean. We have something on the Subaru Solterra. We have a first look with the new Acura Integra over there. I mean, we have a video out basically on anything important that we saw at the LA Auto Show. And it was really wonderful to have the team be down there and get up close and personal with the cars again. So check those out. We have, like, I swear to God, like 12 first looks at some really cool cars. So yeah, wander on over to the standard Roadshow channel to check that stuff out as well. But moving right along, we have, as I said, Hyundai called it like the living room on wheels, the Hyundai 7 concept. And this is a big boy 3-row SUV, and not so sneakily disguised as a future production car, which will probably be called the Ioniq 7 after the Ioniq 5. This looks like a Genesis to me. Like, I get big time Genesis vibes from this thing. I don't know about you, Antoine.
I see where you get that, particularly when you're not looking at the dot matrix pixel display on the front and rear.
Yeah.
The pixel displays, the sort of jewel-like lights at the rear speak so much to Ioniq 5 design that I think that it is characteristically, I think, where Hyundai is going with its EV design, not necessarily what Genesis is doing. But I also think that the awesome thing about Korean automotive design from Hyundai, Kia, from Genesis is that they swing for the fences every single time. It's never a case of like, and then they came out with a 3-row version of the Ioniq 5 and it looked exactly the same. This looks like they ground up, like we got a couple elements. We wanted to keep the LED lights, but let's from the ground up design a whole new vehicle. They didn't even look, it seems like, at the Palisade. They just said, what can we do with this eGMP platform that we've got underneath this? And they just blue skied it, and it looks amazing. And there's all these like cool details. It's like every shot, every close up shot of this car, even beyond that sort of front end, which honestly I think may actually make production if the Ioniq 5 and what they've been doing with sort of like jewel-like grille design with things like the Tucson are any indicator. I think we will see something very close to that LED front bumper on a production model.
Agree.
But everywhere you look there's something. There's like little like diamond cut jewel elements on the wheels. There's inside the wheels, there's active aerodynamics, like little flaps that move around to like, oh, the brakes are getting a little hot. Let's suck a little more air in. And now the brakes are cool. Let's flop back down for aerodynamic slipping through the air with more efficiency. That's something I don't think I've ever seen on a vehicle. I don't think that will make production, but it's a cool pie in the sky idea. Out back, you've got that sort of completely vertical, almost full glass rear. Maybe it's a hatch. It doesn't look like it opens on the concept, but it does remind me of like 70s and 80s hatchbacks, like I think the Volvo 1800, the old Civic hatchbacks. It's crazy. Like that's not going to be crash ready. Like that's not going to make it to production, but it's kind of cool. And on the inside, of course, that's the main event, is that sort of big open space, but also a very flexible cabin. Like it looks like all of the seats are on these sort of center pillars that can slide back and forth on tracks. And so you can fold the front seat down into an ottoman, for example, and then the back seat can sort of slide forward so you can get your feet up on it. to create like a living room space back behind the driver. The third row is this sort of like wrap around bench that you can kind of get back there and get real comfortable on. With your head basically like right in front of the rear glass. It's an interesting sort of take on interior spaciousness that I'm very interested to see how that translates into a production vehicle that is probably going to have regular doors, not these sort of big open coach doors or anything like that. But they did a similar thing with the Ioniq 5 with that center console that sort of slides around a little bit to sort of give second row passengers access to like your charging and your climate controls and a little bit of storage there, and then it can slide back forward for front passengers. In production, that concept is actually a little bit more pedestrian. So it'll be interesting to see how all the crazy ideas we see in this car get sort of distilled down to something that they can actually produce, thousands of. And I'm fairly certain that, especially if you look at the Carnival, like what they're doing with things like the Kia Carnival with their sort of like very luxurious backseat, and that, like, imagine that level of luxury in like an electric Hyundai.
Yeah. I think this is a knockout design. I mean, I know Craig, who's normally here, he's not a huge fan of current Hyundai design because he doesn't think it's going to age very well. But in the moment, it's hard to dismiss the fact that it feels so fresh. It feels so different. And it feels exciting, like it feels good that it's unconventional in a way with that, the pixelated elements that you saw on the what was it, the 45 concept that previewed the Ioniq 5. And you're just like, no way, like that is out of this world, never making it to production. And then the Ioniq 5 debuts and they're like, no, this is the production one. And you're like, what? Like it feels like what you thought the future was going to be in like the 80s and 90s, looking into like 2030 kind of thing. So
Right.
I don't know if in a way it's playing on people's emotions, these kinds of designs, because Hyundai is doing a good job at translating the concepts and these really crazy conceptual elements to production. I mean, seriously, guys, looking at specifically the front, get rid of those individual pixels and just put like some very slim LED running lights up front. The lower pixels can be traditional headlights because that's what Hyundai's done on so many cars, especially the Kona, to give you that idea of slim headlights, and the actual headlights are below. I mean, toss some production elements on there and you could be very, very close to what a 3-row Ioniq 7 will look like when Hyundai does build this.
Sure. It may not be actual LED pixels, but I mean, I would be honestly surprised at this point after seeing, what they've done with the headlights on the Sonata, what they've done with the headlights, or at least the daytime running light signature on the Santa Cruz and the Tucson. Like they're kind of pushing the limits of just like visual, design for and lighting technology on the front of their cars. I think we'll see something that looks like it's this pixel display, maybe isn't actually a pixel display that can wipe across and do all the cool sort of future autonomous vehicle communication things that a lot of these concepts do. But if the daytime running light signature doesn't look exactly like it does on this vehicle, I will frankly be surprised.
Yeah. Yep, totally. But the design's really cool. They didn't tell us really anything about the powertrain or specs in that kind of regard, though. They're saying theoretically this would do 300 miles on a charge. We don't know what kind of battery they're thinking about. I would assume all-wheel drive for at least one version of this that will eventually come out, just if they're going to try and pin it as a big SUV kind of thing. And we should mention that the materials chosen inside, not only is there some lovely bamboo, but the surfaces are coated in a antimicrobial surfacing that kills viruses and germs. So thank you, COVID-19 pandemic, for making that a trend, because I guarantee you that's not something you would have seen in a concept car 3 years ago.
I don't know. I think that it just being cleaner is probably better anyway.
Yeah.
Going
I mean,
forward,
that's
whatever our
yeah.
next pandemic is, it's nice to be future
Yeah.
proof for that.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, seriously. But that is about all we wanted to talk about with the 7. You know, I wish we could say it's coming in a couple years or something like that, but maybe give it maybe give it 2 or 3 years, because that seemed to be the timeline Hyundai did for the Ioniq 5. Um, so we'll have to see, but I'm excited to see what
It
this
could
looks
be
like for
sooner. I
production.
mean,
I That's
with
true.
the
Yeah.
modularity of the platform, like it's quite possible that, I mean, they could be further along in the design and engineering for the actual vehicle, and this is just
Mhm.
our first look, our first taste of the
Yeah.
design. But they may be actually pretty close to
Yeah.
knowing what they want the actual vehicle to look like. It's
Mhm.
very possible we could see
Yep.
this in a year or so.
I mean, that's a great point, and it's a great segue because Kia brought what seems to essentially be its own version of the Hyundai 7 in the EV9 concept, because this is another big SUV that also rides on Hyundai Motors eGMP platform. Like you said, it's super flexible, scalable. You can do so many things with it, you know, between the Kia EV6 and the Ioniq 5 and now these couple of big SUVs. So they're really showing what they can do with that architecture that they developed. And and again, like you said, Antoine, they could be bringing these to production even quicker than we would have originally imagined. But I'll pose this question to you: uh, EV9 or Hyundai 7? Because I'm interested to see which one you like better, just in terms of design.
Hyundai 7, which is,
Hyundai 7,
if you ask me the same question, EV6, Ionic 5, it's EV6. I mean, these
really?
brands are going back and forth. Like, their
Yeah,
design departments are at war right now, like right
yeah,
across from each
yeah.
other at the same facility in Korea,
Hmm.
with their like separate everything in the same street address. But I mean, the Hyundai 7 is more interesting. I think that its sort of take on interior design is way more interesting. The
Hmm.
EV9 looks good. It's a great looking concept.
Hmm.
I like the sort of um, big boxiness of it, but it doesn't really click for me like the EV6 does.
Yeah, something about the 7 feels classier. This feels very much in line with what Kia has been doing, which is these really big, bold statement kind of vehicles with the EV6, and not even other electric vehicles, but like the new Sportage is like, wow, that's something, you know, kind of thing.
Hmm.
But at certain angles, I seriously get Cadillac vibes. Like from the rear, I feel like a little bit of Escalade. Up front, that LED signature really reminds me of an XT4. Um,
Hmm.
and then this also feels like someone took an air pump to a Kia Soul, took a chisel, and made this like edgy giant Kia Soul. You know, I don't know.
Hmm.
I got a lot going on with this design where I definitely prefer the Hyundai 7 concept, but none of that is to say that this is an ugly looking SUV. Like, I still think it looks cool in its own right.
It does look cool. I love those triangular design wheels. Those
Yeah.
are very cool. I mean, the interior on this actually, I mean, it's also very crazy and high future,
Mhm.
but it looks closer to what we could expect from a production vehicle, I reckon. Again, this is the second time we're seeing these sort of coach doors where the back doors are rear hinged.
Mhm.
Maybe they're hinting that this is something we could expect to see on a vehicle like this, giving you that sort of the sort of access to the second row that you would get in, say, a minivan, in something that's in the class of a 7-row SUV. I mean, imagine the ease of getting into the back seat. For example, if you had a larger
Mhm.
door opening with that rear hinge door, you may not even have to get the people out of the car seat out of the second row. Maybe I mean, it would also be interesting to see a sliding second door on one of these. The typically when we think about SUVs, we've got our doors and we've got our B pillar, and I mean, there's really no reason to have that if you can strengthen the body enough, and also since these electric vehicles have such strong substructures with their sort of EGMP skateboard underneath, there's probably a lot less body flex. And so perhaps the engineers are looking at what's going on here and talking to the designers and going, maybe one of these, the EV9 or the Ioniq 7 that ultimately comes out of the Concept 7, will have a less conventional second door. That would be very interesting, and it would definitely help these stand apart from everything else in the market. The rest of design aside.
Yeah, totally. There's, again, like we said about the sound when we were talking about the Taycan, like EVs are kind of a blank slate in so many respects that you can do so much with the cabins because of flat floors, no transmission tunnels. You can position things so much differently. I mean, it's kind of endless right now, where I think we're at the tip of the iceberg for automotive design going into the future, to be like, what can we do now that we have newfound freedoms in some sorts of ways? But Kia also said that this is the clearest signal yet, were the brand's words, that this is previewing a production vehicle to come. I think they said like the next member of its EV family after the EV6. So this is previewing something that you're going to eventually be able to buy at a Kia dealership. When? We don't know yet. But like Antoine, you said, it could be sooner than we think, just because of that EGMP platform. Yeah, it really could be. Just don't expect the Squircle style yoke wheel, because that's silly. We said, Craig and I said it last week. I don't know why for decades designers are like, let's put this weird shaped steering wheel in there, and then never has that ever made it to production, like, because a round circle works perfectly fine.
You know, 2 Tokyo Motor Shows ago, I drove a prototype vehicle with a yoke and a concept, drive-by-wire system, and it made me a believer in the span of about 30 minutes. And then I walked away from it, and then I didn't think about it again until Tesla put the yoke on that Model S. And I think that in the future, I mean, I think it is viable, and it is super weird. Make no bones about it. It is super weird, and it relies very heavily on steering tuning, more so than a circle wheel, because there's no slop involved, because it's really hard to take a yoke beyond, like 25, 30 degrees of steering angle before it gets awkward. Right. And so it's possible someone will do it right. I just don't know if it'll be this car. I don't know if it'll be anything on the road right now.
Yeah, I mean, Kia and Hyundai have been risk takers, but we'll see if they risk doing something kind of crazy and wild like that. But yeah, overall, both the 7 and the EV9 concepts seem pretty promising, and they look exactly like vehicles that could get more Americans interested in electric vehicles as the years go on, and we perhaps see new incentives. That kind of thing is pushed, kind of thing. But they seem like perfect vehicles. Is my final point I will make on EV9. But yeah, that's really all the time we had to talk about some of the biggest concepts and production vehicles we saw from the Los Angeles Auto Show. But there was so much more. Like I said earlier, you can catch more of it on the standard Roadshow YouTube channel. We have so many first looks at these concepts and new vehicles, but also at theroadshow.com, we have details on the US spec, Subaru Solterra and Toyota BZ4X. Both of those are still terrible names. We have information on the Dodge Challenger and Charger jailbreak models with crazy wild customization that Dodge is going to let you do, for better or for worse. And also at LA this week, we saw the Porcshe 718 GT4 RS, and that thing is dope. So you can check it all out at theroadshow.com. But with all of that said, and you guys skedaddling over to see more stuff, Antoine, thank you so much for being here. And as always, we love when you're here. Yeah. We love when you're here. Tell Antoine you loved his Dodge video on Roadshow News, and that he should do more news hits because he's awesome on camera. But yes, thank you so much to you. And thank you, as always, to Evan Miller, our video producer, who makes all this come together, because it literally wouldn't be a thing without him. So we appreciate you as well. And thank you so much for watching Roadshow News Recap, where we dissect and discuss the biggest automotive news stories from the past week. I should mention that next week is a holiday for us here in the US. It is Thanksgiving. Our staff will be taking time off, so we will not have a live show next week, but we will see you the following week. And until then, take care. Have a great holiday if you're celebrating. Bye-bye.